So welcome to the new episode of Next Creators. Today we have BruceTheGoose with us. Thank you for joining. Maybe we can start with you giving maybe a couple sentences on what you're doing in the space.
Primarily, I'm an artist, but I'm also building NFT Hub, which is a resource portal and toolkit and knowledge base and a dozen other things for collectors, creators, or just basically people intrigued by NFTs. Mostly because there's a few ongoing frustrations in the space, like almost a couple of years now that I've been in it, where it's Twitter's a lot of noise, Discord gets pretty chaotic, Telegram is a thunderdome, and a lot of it is pretty useless, and people miss out on a lot of stuff because of it. So it's a community calendar that anybody can submit to. It's a permissionless directory similar to Product Hunt where anybody can list their projects. It's a dedicated social media center, handful of other things.
Got it. And where did you grow up?
Near Buffalo, New York.
Nice. So were you into art or writing pretty early on?
Yeah, I think I've been a pretty creative person my whole life. I did a lot more creative writing before getting into NFTs. Because if you hand me pen and paper or paint and canvas, I can't give you anything special. But with a computer, I can make some cool stuff. But I always figured, if there's any jobs in the field, they're going to be filled by somebody who's way more qualified than me. And then I found the NFT space and I threw up some random stuff on Scent, and people were super supportive, and the community is really what pulled me in.
Was it the art angle that you got involved in crypto? I remember the first time, I think you mentioned before, you got an introduction into crypto through gaming, actually.
Yeah. So I had zero interest in crypto prior to NFTs. And to make a long story short, I was looking at Bitcoin as a potential payment option for an online store because banks didn't want to deal with me because I was a first-time business owner and whatever else. And so while I was looking into Bitcoin, I came across an article about Engine Coin. And I was I'm familiar with them as being a gamer for most of my life. I played a lot of Minecraft online. And so I was well, what does Engine need cryptocurrency for? And why wouldn't they just use Bitcoin? Why do they need their own coin? And so I started reading about it, and they were talking about their interoperable multiverse for games and taking assets from one game into another game and selling them on third-party marketplaces and stuff like that. And it's this changes everything ever. Someone who's put thousands of hours and dollars into WoW, and can get nothing back out of it. It's oh man, this NFT thing is pretty cool. And then looking a little deeper into the rabbit hole, I came across Async Art's first release, The First Supper. And that just absolutely blew my mind, and I haven't looked back since.
Nice. So Async Art was pretty much the first crypto art project you encountered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How was the crypto art community back then?
It was incredible. It was pretty small, but everybody was super supportive and non-judgmental, and I think in a sense we pretty much still are. But at the moment, there's a lot of people coming in just for the money, and that's frustrating. So we're a little more reserved about welcoming people with open arms. Right, yeah. And the money is important. I got, as an artist, to be able to make a living off of what you want to do is incredible. But if you're not really into art and you're just oh, well, I can slap together some pixels and sell it for money, and that's your only interest, then what are you doing here?
Yep. And how was the art overall, the art scene before NFTs came around? From my understanding, it was extremely hard to monetize art on the internet.
Yeah, I'd assume so. Like I said, I didn't do a lot of visual art prior to getting into NFTs. But from what I understand, your options are pretty much do client work and get paid about 10% of what you're worth, or try and sell physical prints on the internet and then ship it, and that costs probably half as much as you're going to sell it for.
So it just doesn't make much sense. What about the creative writing you were doing? Was there any opportunity for creative writing to get paid for?
I've done a little bit in the NFT space. So as an example, I've done a few different pieces that are based on D&D world that I created. 'Cause I'm a big D&D nerd. And then I'll put snippets of the lore about that location in the world, alongside in the description for the art. Like that's been really cool because like it lets me see that world in a way that I never got to experience it.
And do you see those worlds also kind of converging and meeting crypto? How do you think about those communities?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's. I've actually, that's what I. Random thought. I won't get sidetracked. But I'd be surprised if we don't see stuff like that. Like there's a lot of tabletop platforms or online platforms for tabletop gaming, where like people are creating maps and creating character tokens and stuff like that. Like the fact that it's not NFTs already is kind of surprising. And like with the ability to lock content, like you could put ebooks easily as NFTs and sell them for $5, and like you unlock the download for the actual ebook when you buy it.
Yep. And also, when it comes to like running NFT Hub now, do you feel like it's your responsibility now to also kind of check every single platform out there to kind of share the knowledge then with the community afterwards? Are you fairly experimental?
Yeah, I've probably made it on just about every platform you can, like tested them out, and like I bookmark stuff all the time. So like at some point, like I'll give a rundown on a lot of it, like 'cause it's still very nascent, and like I'm still trying to get it up and running properly. But then a big part of the idea is that like if you're a content creator in the NFT community, like let me know what your YouTube channel is, or give me your RSS feed, or apply to write on our blog, etc. Like I'll host all the content here and aggregate it all into one place.
And the other side of it, collectors also. How do you see the collector mindset? Who they are? What do they do in the space?
I think there's probably a pretty diverse range of collectors. Like there's definitely, at least there was up until this year, we've probably seen like 5 times the amount of growth in the people that are entering the NFT space. But like I think there for a lot of it, the last year and a half or so, like a lot of the big collectors were people that have already made a whole ton of money in crypto and are like buying speculative assets to make profit on. And then like on the other hand, there's a bunch of artists that like as artists are like, oh, I've had some pretty good success, like I'd like to support other artists and buy art I appreciate because I can, and that feels great.
Yep.
Like I have, I don't know, probably a couple thousand NFTs, and 80% of them are art.
Is there a good way for you to manage them across all of the platforms? Is there like file management system of some sort that unites all of them, or not really?
To an extent, yes. Like there's a platform called This Is Showtime, and then there's another one that's older that people are pretty unaware of called Flaunt.me, which lets you like make little galleries and stuff like that. And then Mark Cuban made one called Lazy.com, but like I personally think it's crap compared to the other options. Like, come on, Cuban, like you got how much money? You can't do better than this. But so like Flaunt.me, for example, like lets you create galleries out of everything you own. But like then that's just Ethereum mainnet, and now like there's NFTs on Wax and Hive and Polygon and XDAI and Tezos and pretty much anywhere you can think of. Any blockchain is looking at NFTs now because of all the hype this year.
Yep.
Yep. And you were also involved early on in Paras, right? You were the first artist, pretty much.
Yeah, I was the first artist on there, or
Nice.
first artist to mint anyway. I don't know if I was the first whitelisted, but
Got us.
they made the keys to Paris, and then I made the Golden Goose.
That's awesome. Were you involved in their founder sale recently? The pack they did?
Oh no, I wasn't. I lost my Near wallet a while ago, or I got a seed phrase around here somewhere. It's just misplaced. I haven't had the time to like tear my house apart looking for it.
Yep. How would you say also about the this year? Like, why do you think was the huge spike in usage and all this crazy stuff happening?
I think Topshots was definitely a catalyst, like the NBA thing. So that's really easy. Like you buy it with a credit card, and like you have an email and a password login. You don't have to worry about like the whole seed phrase thing and all that. And it's the NBA, so like tons of sports fans, people understand collecting sports cards. Like they've been doing that for decades. That's probably over like just about every day. That's like the most, if not the most like monetary volume, like definitely the most user volume for like trades and stuff. And so like I think with that, like it woke people up a little bit to like the possibilities.
Yep. And do you see this continuing to be kind of like bigger brands becoming kind of like the ones where there is a lot of usage because it's existing IP, or do you also see kind of like it's almost like two different worlds, like bottoms up, kind of like new things, and then NBA?
I kind of feel like somebody will come into the space because they like NBA and they find the top shots, and then like they, once you're in the rabbit hole, there's no climbing back out. Like once you look down it, it's like, oh look, there's other stuff over here though, and like I was like, that's what happened to me, for example. Like I was like, oh, gaming where I can actually own my stuff, like that's crazy. And then I was like, oh, but there's art too. Then from there, it's like, oh, but there's all this other cool stuff. Like I think we've barely scratched the surface for what NFTs are capable of. Like Uniswap version 3 is a perfect example of that. Like your liquidity pools are controlled by an NFT.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know exactly how that works. I haven't really looked into it.
And how do you think about also about NFT Hub and running it? Like, what is the biggest challenge for you? Like, how do you spend your day to day?
I spend my day to day with like the worst ADD. I have probably 40 browser tabs open right now on my main screen, and about a dozen on my other screen, and like most of them are actively doing something.
That's cool. Is it like learning about new concepts or experimentation of some sort?
It's primarily me being a DeFi degen because Polygon like took away transaction fees and left Solidity. Like, there's a lot of DeFi stuff going on over there.
Got it. That's cool. So you turned into DeFi degen along the way as well.
A little bit, yeah. I'm I'm shocked I avoided it or ignored it completely all last summer. But at the same time, like there's a huge difference. And even last summer when the gas wasn't terrible, like there's a big difference in I'm spending $10 or $20 on every transaction compared to I'm spending like a hundredth of a penny on every transaction.
How do you also think about like all of the new chains kind of launching? Does it feel like it's fairly fragmented right now, the space, or people kind of like do everything?
Felt like it was pretty fragmented before, which was like a large part of the motivation for NFT Hub. Because like I was like, I figure I can build a website halfway decent with a variety of different no-code tools, and like I can put social features where like it's dedicated to NFTs and like to the community. And so like instead of being on Twitter and Telegram and 1,000 other places, like we could come together in one place, share info, share knowledge, teach each other things, etc. But it also seems like everybody wants to be king of their own castle. So
Do you do any events with your community? Do you do kind of like any recurring, like weekly, bi-weekly hangouts?
yeah, we've been doing weekly AMAs with different NFT projects. So I recently realized that like a bunch of the people that you see in Telegram, like jumping in the Telegram groups, like, oh, who can I propose an AMA? Like they want 1 or 2 ETH minimum to do an AMA with their community. It's like, yo, that's ridiculous. Like, come do an AMA with NFT Hub. Like, I want to learn about your project. And some of these other people probably do too.
That's interesting. How do you also think about the platforms that are kind of like more like variable, where like anybody can post? Sorry, not anyone, but it's more like a platform versus more like min-based kind of like storefront, where it's a little bit more decentralized, but like more education required. Have you tried any of the non-storefront ones? Oh, sorry, non-platform ones.
So I guess it depends what you mean by non-platform. Like I've used Mintbase when it was on Ethereum, and like as an example, like right now it's not reasonable at all. But like Rarible does have a built-in feature where you can launch either 1155 or 721 contracts, and like then you get your own collection and you get your own storefront, and like it aggregates to OpenSea as your own storefront. But it, when I was doing that, it was maybe $50 to launch a contract, and now it's probably 1,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like people are just using the default contracts, and like the OpenSea quote-unquote gasless minting is really a band-aid on a Ebola wound. It's one shared contract, nothing's actually minted until it's purchased or transferred, and then if like I buy something, as an example, I bought a piece from somebody, like an incredible piece of art, and like I saw the artist on Rarible like saying how hard it was to get started in NFTs, and like they had this beautiful piece, and they were like, I lowered the price to like under $8. I was like, yo, that is criminal. Like, I will pay the $60 in gas with a smile to get that off of you. And then I sent him a piece from that I've done. I was like, and I sent him a message. I was like, the fact that you think this is only worth $8, like, makes me really sad. And there's no way I was not going to buy it. Here's a piece that I did. Like, you can sell it, you can keep it, like, whatever's more beneficial to you. But, like, I cannot accept that this is only $8.
How do you think about like price formation? Like, are there any good ways for people to even discover what they should charge for things?
Yeah, I think that's kind of difficult in general. Like, it's a lot of like what you think your time is worth, and I think a lot of people undervalue themselves because they want to get the exposure and stuff like that. But then that's your price history. So like people are gonna expect you to sell for that, and like if you sell a piece for like $100, and then like the next week you're like, oh, I put a lot of work into this, I want to sell it for 1,000. Like it's less likely because people are gonna be like, well, some people I think are gonna be like, well, I could get it for $100 though. Like I thought. But then at the same time, like, discovery is difficult right now too. Like there's just so much on every platform that's easily accessible.
Yep. So do you think we are limited by amount of like collectors in space as well?
Maybe a little bit, but like I don't think it's so much that we're limited by the collectors as like the collectors we have are like they have artists they like already, and like the trying to find new people on OpenSea and Rarible, like with all the people coming in and all the random cash grab stuff happening, there's been a lot of examples of like people plagiarizing work and selling it, and I couldn't tell you how many fake punks I've seen in the past 6 months.
How do people combat this? Is there a way to kind of like somehow actually flag it and kind of fight it, the counterfeiting?
Either somebody recognizes it from like being another artist's work, or and like when I say fake punks, I don't mean like just copy pasted crypto punks. It's just like people doing derivatives of them, and like that seems very low effort, but it's making people a lot of money, which is kind of frustrating because like I'm not gonna sink to that level. You know what I mean? Like throw a crypto punk through a filter one time and sell it for $1,000. Like I respect myself as an artist, and I'm not gonna do that regardless of what's selling. I've probably sold 3 pieces all year.
How do you think the space will evolve going forward?
I think we're gonna see a lot more of NFTs that have like utility beyond being art. Like, no code in the Web 2 space is getting more powerful every day. It's only a matter of time until we have no code drag and drop smart contracts where you can create an artwork that also serves as an access pass to your website or like an event ticket or something like that.
That's awesome. And what would you say for the listeners overall? Like what kind of message do you want to leave them with?
I'd say so. There's a couple things like crypto is not hard to or not easy to learn. Definitely do your due diligence. Learn like the proper security stuff. Don't leave thousands of dollars in MetaMask. I learned that the hard way. And then like, on top of that, like all this like propaganda. Maybe that's a harsh term, but like the people saying that like we're killing the environment by minting NFTs. It's like, okay, A, the blockchain would be running whether or not we're minting NFTs on it. B, chances are we're clogging up the network and slowing down all the transactions, and it's getting used less because we're minting NFTs. And on top of that, like for a physical art gallery to run, or for them to print canvas and paint and paintbrushes, etc., and transport art across the country or across the ocean, like that's probably a lot more dangerous or detrimental to the ecosystem than us sitting in our houses doing it on our computers.
Good point.
How much money did they print last year, right? Like that's a lot of paper a lot of trees they had to cut down, and a lot of air pollution, etc. Like, and the social media that they're complaining about it on is probably one of the worst offenders, like big tech.
Yep.
But aside from that, like, I spent the past 2 decades barely having 2 pennies to rub together. And while I'm not rich by any means, like, I mentally, financially, emotionally, etc., like, I'm better than I've ever been in my life because of NFTs.
Specifically because of the community.
The community is a huge part of it, but then, like, also, like, having something, like, realizing how passionate I am about art and about creative freedom and about the whole fundamentals of decentralization. Like, is having real passion for something in life is something I've never really experienced. Like, I've had really bad depression and anxiety for as long as I can remember, and like I'm too busy to be depressed right now. Like, I wake up and like every day is a new adventure because there's a million different things going on in the NFT space all the time.
That's awesome.
I think it's changing a lot of people's lives as artists, and like a lot, like, again, like there's a very small percentage of us getting rich, but like a lot of us are able to stay home and not go wage slave at a job we hate and like make a living off creating, and that's amazing.
Do you think people mostly supplement their current work with this additional income, or a lot of people in your experience kind of left their jobs?
I would assume that most people probably are supplementing their jobs because like they're working a full-time job, so they don't have full time to dedicate to it to begin with. And then like a lot of people that are working a job and like making decent money selling their art probably aren't gonna have that confidence of like, oh, well, I'm just gonna quit my job and do this. Whereas I had the distinct advantage of I didn't have a job already, and like I got started like right before the pandemic hit, and like I don't have a car, so it's like, well, I don't really have an option to go get a job because COVID, no car, I live out in the country, so it's like I sell my art or I don't eat. That's pretty good motivation. And then like now, like I haven't had a need to get a job since.
That's awesome.
I turned down a job recently. Some art gallery in New York City offered me a job as like a curator and consultant for NFTs, and I was like, yeah, I don't really got time for that, but like if you want my consultancy on a part-time basis, like you can pay me for that. Like, I don't really need your job, and I don't have time to dedicate to it. So thank you anyway.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming today. I think that was like really educational.
Yeah, I hope so.